difference.
Yeah.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good evening for Lisa because she's at Bali.
Exactly.
So nice. What is the weather like on Bali in these days?
Blue skies, sunshine, rainbows, everything's perfect here. You know, exactly how you imagine paradise.
What is the temperature in Celsius, not in Fahrenheit?
You know what? I don't actually know, but I'd say something around 30. You can see I have a nice sweat glow going on for me.
Yeah. So there's a 6 hours difference to CET time. Yeah.
Exactly. And you've got a compliment coming your way, Jan. You're looking very handsome with your new branding background here.
Yeah. Now I have some real professionals working with me, so it's gonna to be nicer, So, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to welcome you. If you can, there is somebody already there. If you can put there in comments that you can hear us and see us. I will, meanwhile, check LinkedIn. YouTube looks like we are on YouTube. So,
and as you're checking, I'll just add in for anybody who's wondering, should I go visit Bali? Should I go visit, all these beautiful island countries in Asia? Yes, because you know how I spent my morning swimming with wild dolphins in the ocean.
Wow, that's something.
So exactly.
I used to swim at, Barbados like 15 years ago with turtles. That's also nice, with large turtles.
There's something about being in nature.
That's the teasing for, next vacation. And let's kick off the theme for today, which is longevity is not luck. It's a leadership strategy. And by longevity, in this sense, we don't mean only like live, longer, which is always, great, but we think like live longer in executive positions and not to get, burned or even like depressed, like, me. In fact, today I will start with my, own story, because the theme is a little bit opposite to what I did in my career. I want you to avoid it. But anyway, Lisa, kick it off and then I will, start with my story and we can, continue.
Exactly. Jan, you're the perfect person to discuss what does longevity mean in a career. And you hear longevity, everybody's hearing longevity, buzzwords, health, but really we're not talking about just living longer. Nobody wants to be 100 but sick for 20 years. We're really talking about health span and how to make things be healthier for longer. Same with your career. For most of you, yes, nice to have the dream. I'm going to retire at 60. I'm going to retire at 65. But the reality is, if you're going to live until 80, 90, 100, you're going to be bored if you're not doing something.
That's true.
With your third act. So we're looking at longevity as in, how do I stay connected to career or meaningful work? Or how do I keep my brain sharp, my body sharp? How do I have a nice health span and how it relates to living my legacy, living my career out? And Jan, I'm so glad you said you're willing to share your story publicly, because I think it's the perfect example of why it's so important to take the rest before the rest takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will start with my childhood, because I was brought up by the parents who were born before the Second World War. So the bringing up was kind of the tough, right? It was all about like, good results in the school, in the sport and performance and so on. I, absolutely loved my parents, but on the other hand, it was really like based on, kind of the tough approach, right? That's one, moment. Then I learned in, sport that there's no free lunch simply. And then I started in Microsoft, where there was a saying, second place, first loser. Okay. And there is something, in our life. We have obviously genes. Genetic information is what you are getting from the previous generation. So I guess my genes were really like achieving results, compete, and so on. I mean, I know who were my parents or my parents' parents. Plus, there is something called epigenetics. So I was like in the sport environment, in the family, when, almost everything was like measured and compared. And then I went to Microsoft, the same thing, one of the, most competitive companies, not only in software industry, but in general, okay? So you've got some genes, and then epigenetics plays also a role. And if you are not able to handle, because we have like 4 energies. I think I handled quite well my physical energy, because when I was depressed, when I started to be depressed, my body was like the body of the top athlete. So that was good. Emotional energy was kind of the good. I was sometimes, nervous, whatever, but in general, I handled my emotions very well. My mental energy was, good, but I was not able to basically get mental rest. And whatever is the system, whether it's a business system or your body system, if you are taking from the system and you are not able to give, you take, you're not giving it up. At some point, you will get bankrupt that system. And that's exactly what happened to me. And the spiritual energy I've got, I think I really love what I was doing. So what I'm saying, even if you do what you love, you can still be burnout or even depressed. Because you need to, whatever you are getting from your system, in this sense, it was my mental energy, my ability, my cognitive ability, my ability to concentrate, and so on. You need to give back. What means to give back? Sleep very well, have a mental rest, and if you go like for run or for walk, you just go and you just listen to the birds or to the trees or to the wind or whatever. My brain was working almost like 24/7. I was in the bed for 8 hours. I was sleeping probably in average between 5 to 6 hours, and that's not enough. And I think for 3 hours, my brain was going like, hey, what I will do next day. And I was so excited, I could not, sleep. And then when I was 50 years old, my, mental system collapsed, basically, and I almost died, right? So you need to be very careful, because we're speaking about longevity here, and I could be easily dead for 13 years already. So I'm taking now every day like a new, opportunity. They asked me many times in many interviews, because I was quite open with what happened to me. So they asked me many times, Jan, what did you do differently? What I started to do, I started to live much more in the present moment, right? What does it mean? Okay. It means that I do like meditation, I do yoga, Tai Chi in the morning. And honestly, I don't care. I mean, obviously, I care, right? But I'm really concentrating on here and now. I care about my present moment. Whether I coach people or I speak or I learn, I teach. And I really do what I love the most, which means like teaching people and learning and do some, physical activities, right? And obviously spending time with my friends and family and so on. But this is it. And, so what are the learnings for you guys? Number one, you need to have a balance between like getting from your mental system and giving. So you need to live balanced life, because brain is all about, balancing, nothing else, right? Whatever you're getting, you need to give back. This is it, right? So that's one point. So you need to have enough mental rest, because whatever you do today, whether it's some cognitive activity or physical activity, you are under the huge pressure, and there will be even more stress in the future. So we need to be able to handle our stress much better, and to have a rest, obviously. This is it, right? Because, Bill Gates recently said that some jobs will be eliminated very soon. So I'm looking forward to have like 4 days, working week, and 3 days I will do what I really like to, learn a little bit more. Anyway, so have a mental rest. That's number one. And number two, trust professionals, okay? I visited my psychiatrist, after 3 months, and it was almost too late. So you need to visit doctors very soon if something like that is happening. And I'll give you some hints. If you are not able to sleep for a couple of weeks, or if you have like, repetitive negative thoughts, you better go and visit psychiatrists or, somebody who some psychologist, maybe if it's not that, deep yet. But consult professionals, right? Google will not help you, in that sense. Google is quite helpful, but it's good to visit professionals, right? So that's in the nutshell. And on the other hand, it was a bad experience for me, but I learned so much from that. Otherwise, I would not be able to coach people today for the top performance under the huge, pressure, which is, it's, athletes, kids, some executives and so on. So that's in the nutshell what happened. I totally recovered. I was for 5 years on antidepressants. That's another comment I would like to mention. There's a lot of people who would say, hey, I'm now much better after half of the year. I will forget. It's not good to take antidepressants. Well, I was like following whatever my doctor was telling me. I was, following his advice, and it paid off. I'm like more than 7 years now without antidepressants, right? So that's in the nutshell the story. Huge learning. And I learn a lot what obviously not to do, but how to do it, much better. And I know it will not repeat because I know what to do. And we can, talk about some routines what you can do like every day and so on. Yeah. So that's it was a long story, but anyway.
I think it's really great that you share it and you share it openly.
In fact, what is now? I celebrated now last week. In fact, it was at the end of 2 weeks ago. It was at the beginning of April or at the end of March. I celebrated 13 years since I was released from the mental hospital.
Yay! That's a big step. We do have to celebrate these things.
It is. Yeah.
Because, Jan, what's so important is people don't often talk about that. What we hear in modern culture is productivity hacks, side hustles. How do we do more? How do we do more? And the other thing that we hear all the time is, and that I get asked when people are coaching is, how do I build more mental strength, more resilience, more stamina, more grit, more. And what we don't talk about enough is, when is the less? And it's not do less because we want you to achieve less or you're not going to be great. It's about how do you consistently achieve it. If you think that your career or anything that you're doing is going to be the sprint, I'm just going to sprint until this project's over. I'm just going to sprint until I get the next promotion. Or I'm just going to sprint until that's the rest of your life. And as you can see from Jan's story, the body can only handle so much. So if you don't take your rest and your recovery, your body will take it for you.
Absolutely. I agree. Because, success, it's not about elevator. Success is about the stairs. You go by stairs. And while sometimes, for example, in the book, Power of Full Engagement, Tony Schwartz talk about the sprints. But sprints in that sense are very important events in your life. But, if you wanted to have a long-term executive career, long-term top performer, like top athlete career, it is about, long game. Those are, Simon Sinek calls it infinite game, right? You mentioned it in the notification, basically, because this is it. So you need to think long term, and you need to fulfill all 4 energies: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. I was taking care of the 3 energies, and I thought, well, if that's the case, the mental energy will go automatically. My brain can go forever, and it's not true. Your brain needs to have a rest, even though you do things you really, love. People think they can be depressed only because of the, toxic relationship, the jobs they don't like, and so on. You can be easily depressed by the things you love if you overdo it and you are not able, to give it back to the energy to your body or to your brain,
And this is the major problem for what high achievers have. So just like Jan, any of you who are listening, I'm sure you're high achievers yourselves, and you are taught, okay, you had some kind of tough background, a mom, a dad, a coach, whomever who said, keep going, achievement is important, more and more. And you learned mental strength. You learned, okay, my body is saying no, but I'm going to push through. And at some point, we become so intellectual in our brains that we actually shut down the signals. And I know that many people who are athletes say, no, I really understand my body. I'm really in good touch with my body. The thing is, yes, you might feel your body or you might understand your body, but you're still running it from your mind. And your mind says, I can handle, I'm fine. Oh, just one more week, just one more push, just one more meeting, just one more all-nighter. And the problem with having a mental strength without having the ability to understand when it's too much, is that eventually you don't see the signals. Jan said, I went to my doctor 3 months too late. You probably went years too late.
Yep.
Because we don't listen. Oh, I'm tired. Yeah, but everybody's tired. Right? Oh, I went to my doctor at one point and they said, well, of course you're tired. You run a business and you have young kids and you take care of your parents who are, at that age where they're sick all the time. And so that's just normal and just ignore it. And I was like, okay, true. All of those things are true. And there's something more going on. Now, thankfully, I could be back in touch with my body to say something's not right. And in that case, it was low iron, right? And I just needed an iron infusion and I was okay. But so much of the time we just say, everybody's tired. Everybody's busy. Oh, it's fine. I'll catch up on sleep on the weekend. I'll catch up when I'm on holidays. And the mental strength, which is a great tool to have, promise, Jan and I are not saying get rid of mental strength, but don't overuse your mental strength to the point where you stop listening to the natural cues of your body. Because when you're not taking the rest that you need, when your brain is going 22 hours a day, that's when problems are going to start to happen. You need to start regulating the hormones in your body. And Jan, we can both talk about this, but I feel like we need to touch on how much problem cortisol is and adrenaline and, and what that does to the body if it's on all the time, because it's not meant to be that way.
Yeah. Very often I'm hearing from my clients, whether those are like executives or, top athletes. In fact, I have, after this one, I have, the guy who was at the Olympic Games second in the canoeing. I have best taekwondist and one of the best, football players. So I'm often getting a question, but if my brain is wired in that way, that I'm like achiever and I want to compete and so on, it's hard for me to have a rest. It is not true. And I will quote now Marcus Aurelius, what he said. Your happiness depends on quality of your thoughts. Okay, that's what he said. And as you know, Stoics, they were quite, smart in old Greece, and that was the same with the people from Rome, but in old Rome. But anyway. Let's go back, because people think that your brain is wired forever. It's not true, guys, because your brain is neuroplastic. What does it mean, neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity means that my brain is wired in a certain way, and it's true that those synaptical connections very much depend on your, childhood, on your, work, on the relationship, environment, and so on. But your brain can be rewired. Your brain is wired, but can be rewired. And neuroplasticity works the whole life. So if you change the style of your life, if you change the way you think, and maybe even if you change the job, you can rewire your, brain. That's how it works. Because I give you my example. I think I was great in like sales, marketing. I was, one of the best probably working with the people, because for me, it was always, I need to help people to understand who they are, to figure out who they can be. But in Microsoft, it was used in a specialized ways, whatever I, knew. So I was a specialist. After, Microsoft, and I left Microsoft, and I stayed there for another 3 years after, the episode with my brain, with my depression. And Microsoft has nothing to do with it, because it was my mistake. I should be, more careful, right? Now I'm telling, all executives, all high performers, first of all, you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of the other people in your team. This is it. Okay. So I think my brain, since like 10 years ago when I left Microsoft, my brain, because I'm now having much more time to learn new things, I'm getting much more broader, and I return back probably when I was as a child. So I'm very much, curious. Again, I was curious in Microsoft, but there was a relatively less time, to develop that curiosity. So I think my brain went, since I was in the mental hospital and since I left Microsoft, my brain get really rewired, because I never taught kids, and I think I'm quite good in it now, right? That's because a lot of kids are coming with the parents. And I was never coaching athletes, and I have some Olympic Games winners already. So that's the good example of, rewiring and neuroplasticity. And you can do the same if you will. It's taking, some training. Absolutely.
Exactly. And we've got to get out of this everyday go, grind, faster, in the zone. And what Jan is describing is taking that step back, breathing, seeing everything, reconnecting with the creative part of your brain, the part of your brain that's like, ooh, what would that be like? Hey, what about this? Have we tried this? And it's not about always executing. This is what we see a lot with executives in their work today. They're so busy. They just have their heads down and they're going boom, 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 boom. And now they say, hey, I have layoffs and even fewer staff, and things are moving faster and higher targets. And so I need to do it even more. And I would say the fact that you have gone faster and say you need to do it even more is exactly the reason that you need to pull back.
Exactly.
Now, what we often see is people go, I don't have time for this. So let's make it really easy. Okay. For everybody who's listening now, just take a big deep breath, right? Just actually breathe. That's it. If you do that throughout your day, every moment, you just catch yourself, you're, commuting to work, you're sitting in the bathroom, you're waiting for your coffee, just notice and take a moment. Get into that presencing that Jan talked about. You don't have to have a 20-minute meditation session. You don't need to have a Tai Chi practice. Even if you can just have one big breath.
Absolutely.
That will already help your system, because what happens is your system goes, I have to be on high alert. I have to be on high alert. I have to be on high alert. And what happens for high achievers, this is so important for people to understand. What happens for high achievers is, in fact, when you go to take that breath, your body's going to go, no, that lion is chasing us. We can't slow down. So even if mentally you're like, okay, great, got it. Jan says, take a rest. Cool. I'm going to add that to my to-do list. The reality is that your body has to feel safe enough to actually relax and take the breath. So you need to trust. This is the first mindset shift that people need to make. You need to trust that if I let myself relax a bit, not only is that going to not make me behind, I'm not going to get eaten by the lion, it's going to make me better. And you need to believe that here and in the body. So when you take that breath, go, I'm not doing rest where I'm falling behind. This is what I hear the most. I'm falling behind. I'm going to be behind. I'm going to have too much to do. I have 10 other emails. Moment. Because now I'm going to walk into the next moment where I'm in charge, not where things are overwhelming for me, but I'm ready. I've got this. And that one moment can already start to reset the hormones that are going on inside your body. It's no longer things are happening to me and I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed. That causes cortisol. But maybe I've got this. I know what I'm doing, right? And that gives you the happier hormones that get you more excited. A lot of people who have burnout because they simply feel I've lost the ability to run my life. Things are happening to me and not I'm running my life. So these are the simple switches, a breath every so often, a step into here, I'm in charge. Hey, I'm not going to think about 1,000 emails. My daughter saw my inbox the other day. She was like, Mommy, do your work. I said, I'm doing it. I'm doing as much as I can. So
because the young generation, they don't do emails. They do only instant communication. Yeah, some of them, they don't have an email address, right?
Exactly. But I say when I'm going to check my emails in the morning, I don't go, oh my God, I have 70 emails and I have 20 minutes and I have to do that, right? Already your anxiety, you're panic driven. I take my breath and I focus. I'm going to do one. And when you're just in that moment, in the zone, I just have to do this one. Got it. I just have to do this one. Got it. We're not causing the stress levels to spike. you are more productive and more resilient to burnout, not because you have the anxiety, I have so much to do, I have so much to do. That doesn't help. So body, it's safe. I'm going to take my breath. I'm going to take my step. I'm going to make it an easy, doable step. These are the kinds of things that will bring longevity to your career, but make it super easy. Again, it's not a huge practice shift. It's a mindset shift. I'm in charge. I can take my time and space. I can rest for a moment.
Yeah. What Lisa now demonstrated, basically, it's like, cut between our emotional system and our logical or rational system, which is neocortex. Imagine professor, very slow, but professor wants you, professor thinks obviously rationally, logically, professor wants you to succeed, but it's quite slow. Amygdala, which is the professor is obviously neocortex. Amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, it's like a monkey who wants only to survive, and monkey who is only taking care, because it's survival, taking care of stress, right? So if you are under the stress, forget about the best results or about the best productivity. There's no way you can have a strategic thinking while you are under the stress, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit, right? Because if you are able to handle the stress a little bit, better, and if that stress is actually not chronical, but it's like, up and down, which means like, okay, I have a stress, I have a rest, stress, rest, right? It's a little bit better. But in general, what Lisa demonstrated once, you do like breathing in, breathing out. You create something which we call in psychology freedom of choice. Your professor will decide what to do. You will start to think again more rationally, not I'm under the pressure. Because if you are under the pressure, it's hard to figure out, hey, this is really the most important thing I need to do. Because very often, if I'm coaching people, I'm telling them, tell me one thing which can change totally your situation right now, what you can do right now in this present moment, okay? And that's how you divide, your rational thinking or your logical thinking from emotional thinking, right? So now, back to my depression. I learned really hard, because if you are depressed, your logical part of the brain doesn't work almost. It's all about negative emotions, because number one, priority is survival, but negative emotion is like stream together, and then it's unbearable at some, point. And that's the reason why some people would commit suicide, because they think there is no hope, which like logically there is, like logically I've got like all examination, like health examinations, and it was all okay. Like my physical body was okay, but I didn't believe that, because my rational part of the brain was not working, right? So this is it. And it's similar in those situations where you really go and you are like in the negativity or under the stress. Very often we call it emotional hijack. Does the tennis player playing, very well? There was some tennis player last week. She was winning 6-1, 5-1, and she still lost, the whole match, which is almost impossible, right? But it's called choking in the sport. Choking, like everything goes well, but then boom, right? But it can, it can happen. And breathing is great, way how, to really divide emotions from rational thinking. What I do, right, or what I advise to athletes, especially, if you're breathing in, you may say energy, breathing out present moment. It's like putting your body into the present moment, because your body and breath, those are always in the present moment. Your mind wanders very often. So if you are able to, attach your mind to the breathing or to the body or to the both, that's exactly what you need to do to get back to the present, and then you can, continue. So that's a breathing. It's very much underestimated, tool. You would be surprised how many, top athletes can't still breathe, professionally for that specific discipline.
Yes, that's exactly right. And again, I want to make it really clear to people. Breathing is a really interesting tool, because you can override your natural system. If you
Exactly.
notice I'm breathing really fast and I'm in my lungs right here, I'm hyperventilating, that means I'm stressed, I'm adding more cortisol to the body. And you can choose. But here's the tricky part. There's something inside of you. It's probably not like a voice you hear per se. You might say, I don't have time to breathe, or that doesn't work for me. That's actually your body saying, I don't feel safe enough to let it go down. And that's when you need to use a bit of that mental strength to say, if my body says no to a short breath right now, then I need to breathe twice. That's the clue, you guys. If you feel I can't slow down my breath, my body literally won't let me. I know I should right now, but I'm coming up with all the excuses why I can't. That should tell you my body is so far in this monkey brain amygdala hijack that I need to take back control right at this moment. And again, you can just breathe it out. You can hold your breath. You can do something to presence yourself, sometimes just rubbing your fingers together, or some people like the texture of a shirt or a pants. So you just rub here until you're a little bit back in the moment. Okay, I'm safe. And I have a question that I have people use all the time, which is there an immediate danger in this moment right now? Is a car coming at me and I'm in the middle of a street and a car is going to hit me? That's an immediate danger. You should respond.
Absolutely.
You're about to walk into a meeting. You're not going to die. You're not. So the actual present moment is not dangerous. And that's the first question you need to tell yourself. If it's not dangerous, then ground yourself in something, touch something, breathe something. One thing people do when they're having panic attacks, they say, okay, name 5 things you see. And you guys can practice this right now. Look around your room. I see a ceiling fan. I see a lamp. I see a painting. I see lights up there. The reason that these tactics work is because they put you here in this moment, in this reality. They ground you and they start to take away the monkey a bit and get you to more rational places. This is important. I'll let you go from there.
There is one more which is used in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's basically, creating longer gap between your logical part of the brain and your emotional part of the brain. Because very often you go and you are stressed and you have a stressful thoughts like, hey, I will not make a deadline or whatever. And you go, in the circles, right? And you cannot cut the circle. So you may, ask 3 questions. Number 1, is it logical what I think about? Because very often it's not logical. Do I have any proof? Like if I think, for example, if I will ask my boss, to push deadline one day more further, they will fire me from the job, or I will not, they will not increase my salary. Is it logical? Maybe. Do I have any proof? No way. And is it, serving me right now? No. So is it logical? Do I have any proof? And is it serving to me right now? The answer is no. That's, illogical, and it's probably driven by amygdala, because amygdala is always like, amygdala cannot distinguish what is rational. That's the key, element. Very often people are lost in negative thoughts, which never, happen. Mark Twain was saying, I've got a lot of fears in my life, but nothing happened actually. Right?
Exactly.
So this is it, because you create, by those 3 questions, you create nice, gap. It is always to put back, rationality. I mean, we are not against, like stress if you are really if your life is under danger. It can be when you are crossing the street and there's somebody, going on the red lights, right? But it's very rarely right now. In the past, there was a much more natural stress. Now, the stress which we are in, it's artificial stress. And it's driven mainly by the fact that we are exposed to environment. Well, like if you take social networks, I mean, from the evolution, human beings wanted to be on the high, like on the high level of the ranking, because it meant, I would get, more food, better shelter, whatever, right? Today it's probably about better salary, better, title on the business card, whatever, more fame. And if we are like dropping down, or we think that we are dropping down, and if it's social networks, we think we are dropping down. If I don't have, Louis Vuitton handbag, I'm not, good person, basically. Come on, right? Who cares? It's not about, there are nice handbags, right? But who cares? But this is how your brain works. And then you are like dropping, down, and you think, I'm not, good enough, basically, right? And we are not our business cards. We are not our handbags. We are human beings, right? We are human beings. There's a nice book, Power of Now, right, from Eckhart Tolle. I recommend you to read, or at least, watch some of the YouTubes from him. But this is it. And today, actually, there is a lot of, stressful events, right, around, and a lot of information. We have so many choices. I was asked, recently in some TV interview, what I think about snowflakes generation. Okay.
Whoa, what did you say?
And I said, well, I think really this young generation is a little bit less mentally tough than my generation. Okay. But who was bringing up them? It was my generation, right? And now I'll explain to you. My generation was brought up by before the Second World War, or the Second World War generation of the parents, right? So this was like, childhood at some, level. Every generation wants for the next generation to be a little bit, better and easier, right? When I was a child, there was one program in the TV. I still remember black and white TV, no kidding, right? So what I was doing a lot of sport, because it was like a lot of news. It was like communistic state, right? It was a lot of, stuff like that. But anyway, today you have like on one device, 500 channels. So, young generation is bombing by information. So we were like, the progress was happening, and like, I would say bettering was happening linearly in generations before. Today, it's all exponential. And it's getting, with AI, it's getting, it's getting even, more exponential, right? So this is it. So we need to be careful what we are saying, right? Because we wanted our generation to be, better and to have a better conditions for the life. We brought computing and everything. It was my generation. Come on, Bill Gates, another. I don't think I was like helping them. I was like the bridge, right? But I was there at the time. So now don't complain. And obviously, I was asked what we should do. I think we should teach critical thinking. We should teach emotional intelligence, how to handle stress. There's no way you can have psychologists in each and every class. There is no way, right? But you can teach kids how your brain works. That's what we are doing in today's session on longevity, because when we are teaching kids in our seminars, they can figure out really 8, 9 years old kids on that level. We have like monkey, soft toy, and stuff like that. So we play. It's like school by play. Or the seminar by play, and they figure it out. So this is the way. I don't think that we should basically we should say we should cancel all social networks. Come on, it would be like in industrial era when they were like destroying all machines. Right? There is a progress, and we need to live with the progress, right? And this is it. And I think we should also talk about convergence of the generation. Very often, like, well, Generation Z, Y, X, whatever, they are against, baby boomers. Come on, I have like my athletes. I could be the, grandpa, or at least father, in some cases. I have some athletes 17, 18 years old. I can be grandfather for them, right? And we have very good relationship. No problem with that, because I think I have a more experience. I'm, wiser, but they know much better about technologies and so on. So we can live, nicely together. There's a This is it. And that's what I know. For example, when I was in the worldwide board of ISEC International, I really enjoy it. And those people, I was like over 50 years old. Those people were 30 years, younger than me. And we still work together as a one, team, right? So that's on the stress. So, and I think it applies the same for my generation. It is true that stress is a huge issue even in the schools. I don't know if I told you, Lisa, but I was recently, like 3 weeks ago, in the international school, 150 kids, 50 parents. Those kids between 10 to 12 years old, 90% of the questions they asked were around stress and fear, those two topics. No kidding.
10 years old.
Yeah.
I believe it. And I'm with you on so many of these points about what's going on. And I think there's something important to say about children, but I will also say just in the digital era in general, for all of us, the amount of information we have to process is cognitive overload.
Oh, absolutely.
And the real question is, at least for us as adults who are listening here, what are the things that we can do? Because that cognitive overload is not going away. As you said, the social networks aren't going away. Your work isn't going to get less complex or easier. So what is it that we can do? Number one, what nobody ever tells us is how to discharge stress. Mm-hmm. So many of us have actually said, okay, I'll go for a jog. This is the number one thing I hear from clients. I'll just go for a run and that really gets out my stress. And I'm like, kind of. I definitely encourage everybody to go for a jog. If you want to go for a jog, it's good for your fitness. It is good for your health. You do feel better.
If you go for the jog for 1 hour, don't think about your next meeting with, Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer. Otherwise you will end up in the mental hospital. No, just kidding. But it is. If you go for the jog, listen something, different, maybe music, some different podcast, but not about your job. This is it. Have a, mental rest simply.
Yes. And for me, that's exactly right. Because what happens with a jog is your energy levels are high and you do something that's also at a high intensity. Okay. What we're really trying to do is get back in touch with the body and see what the body needs to do to get rid of your stress. And I'm going to admit it all to you. Over time, as I've come into I work with, I don't know, everybody, natural healers, whatever works for the body, I'm willing to listen. And what I can tell you is, for me, for example, when I get very stressed, I have a feeling in my stomach like I want to throw up. Okay, this is a very natural fight or flight, high fear. And so what I do, and for those of you watching me on video, I'll demonstrate it for you. I literally allow that feeling to come out and I'm like, bleh. Now I'm not actually throwing up, but the idea comes to my body and I let it and I'm like, bleh, bleh, bleh. Okay. Now that's weird. I don't do it in public. I'm not sitting in a meeting room fake vomiting on anybody. Don't worry.
Right.
But when I'm home, if I'm in the bathroom, if I do it later after a very stressful situation, whatever it is, because this is the natural way that the body says, the stress cycle is complete because I was stressed. I did the thing that got the stress out and now it's gone. Now, most of us don't do these things that complete the stress cycle. We swallow it down. We say very nice words to the people who are in the meeting with us, despite that we're angry or annoyed or frustrated. We swallow it down. We're very professional and we hold the stress in and we hold it and we hold it and we hold it. And without being able to discharge the stress, guess what? It stays stuck in there.
It is.
I just want to say one last thing for anyone who's watching.
If you are, what I was doing, what Lisa was doing, you can't do it if you are at a meeting with the, Microsoft leadership team. But whenever I was pissed off, I was doing delete, 3 times delete, right? And it was my signal, hey, don't care about it. It will, it's coming and going, and this is it. But, if you suppress the stress or the fear, it's not going to work simply. And there is a great book, in fact, from this, I don't remember the Dutch professor name, but anyway, the book name is The Body Keeps the Score, basically. Whatever is happening, in your life, somehow there is a, physical memory in your in your body. By the way, it's not in your body, because if you take the muscle memory, it's sitting in your brain. Actually, this is interesting thing relative to the longevity. I was asked by somebody, how is it in the sport or in other activities? How much is it that I know the job, I have a good physical body, and how much is like mental game? I said, well, it's like mental game is a chemical game. So you need to understand, a little bit hormones, what's going on and so on. And, but then I said, well, and the person asked, is it like in tennis, 60% tennis, 40%, your brain, your mental toughness? And I said, actually, everything is about the brain. So you could easily say it's almost 100% about your mind, right? This is it. And I have for you guys, there are like 4 hormones which have, influence on your performance, on longevity, and so on. And this is endorphin. Endorphin is released if you do something you absolutely love, if you have a strong emotional connection to that activity. So endorphin is like keeping you to do it, and you feel like, hey, this is great. It's called in psychology flow. In sport, it's called that those athletes are in the zone. So endorphin is like keeping you to perform, but endorphin is also about the pain. You don't feel any pain, or you don't feel tired if that endorphin. Those are even kids like doing some building some towers like 11 p.m. and they are still not tired, right? So this is it. That's endorphin, right? So you need to be very careful, because I think I got addictive to endorphin, and unfortunately I was not taking care about my mental energy, because second hormone is dopamine. Dopamine is basically encouraging you and basically reflecting what you did, whether those were like successes or some learnings from the past. But dopamine is also encouraging you or motivating you for the future, right? So dopamine is a great hormone when you are like overcoming some tough situations, right? So dopamine is getting you stronger. Then you have a serotonin, which is about like social environment, about the team, and so on. It's like, about the present moment. And then it's oxytocin. Oxytocin is about trust, right? Those 4 hormones, if they are released, on one hand, it's, good for your performance. So you are, successful. But it's also good for your happiness, because if you do something you like, chances are you have a positive emotions, and it has, influence on your, mood, emotions, and so on. And because those hormones are influencing your immunity, it has a huge influence on longevity. But there is a but. Right. And that but is, if you really do it nicely, and I did it nicely. I was in the environment. I love it. I love my team. I love, even like whoever was my boss, Jean-Philippe Courtois and other guys. I love to travel with Bill Gates. But after all of those hormones are released during the day, you need to take care of your sleeping. If you don't sleep enough, actually, those hormones which are released in your brain are washed out by other chemicals during the sleep. Especially deep sleep is very important, okay? If you are not sleeping enough, that means that your, mental energy in the morning, it's not necessarily like 100% or on the top what you can, have. And if it's going for a couple of years, that's the reason why people are like mentally burned out, or even there's some, depression. So again, be careful. If you getting from the system, you need to give, back. That's the same in nature, right? Because we are part of nature. And nature is a great, example how we should behave. That's the same with the seasons, right? We have a seasons, where we are more active, or our like in the past, our predecessors, when they were taking care of agriculture, they were more active. Then they have a rest. That's the same thing. I mean, the thing is, people are like, we're hunting, having a rest, hunting, having a rest. And today we are hunting, and then there's a burnout,
Exactly. And I want to give people really practical tools, because we said, men, sleep is so important.
Right.
Here's the thing. As we've discussed already, if your stress levels are high, your cortisol is high, even if it's just your dopamine is high, your happy hormones are high, it's really hard to calm the body from very high, very intense.
Absolutely.
So what you want to do is, you guessed it, take some breaths, listen to some good music. When you go to brush your teeth, don't be checking the news, don't check those last emails. Put on some music that's going to be soothing for you. Think what you hear in the spa or classical music, because music really influences your body without you having to do any thinking, doing, right? It just happens. And then I recommend to everybody, before you sleep and before you eat, doing a 4-7-8 breath. 4 in, hold for 7, out for 8. The reason you want to do this breath is because it tells your body, we're coming down now. It's safe, right? If you think about ancestrally, if you were out hunting, you were being chased by a lion, you go back to your cave. Are you going to sit and relax in your cave and sleep if you think the lion's still out there? No. Your brain is still thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow and next week. And have I remembered to do this? So it is still moving. You need to give it a signal. It's relaxing time. And that will help. Sorry, I just want to say that deep sleep, that will be restorative.
Absolutely. No, you are absolutely right. Because if you look into the nature, like antelopes are able to cool down in 12 minutes. They are able to forget about the lion attack. 12 minutes, right? Sometimes if somebody's attacking us, we cannot forget about it for like 3 days, right? And now why
30 years, we hold a grudge.
Why, like, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathing out for 7, why it works? Because look, if you are breathing in, your diaphragm goes down and your, heart got, more space to basically pump the blood. So your heart rate goes up. So if you wanted to, like before the tennis match or whatever, if you wanted to pump up, it's really breathing, breathing in longer than breathing out. But if, like rightly Lisa said, if you wanted to cool down, your breathing out should be longer, because in that sense, your, your muscle will go, up, right? The breathing, muscle is going, up, and then your heart got, smaller space, and your heart rate goes down, and that's the way we are cooling down. So diaphragm is really playing very important role in it's that muscle here, like enabling us to breathe, but also diaphragm is good. We need it for good digestion system, right? But this is it. This is the way how you can, cool down and get back into the present moment. Because the thing is that your amygdala, your, issues are always, or fear, are always in the past or in the future. If you are here and now, which is your breath, basically, you don't have any fear, right? If you are you can't be in the present moment and be fearful, because if you are in the present moment, you are here and now. And if you are here and now there is no issue. There is no fear. Fear is from something what happen or may happen into the future. And more you will be able, because your brain is basically predicting. Your brain is like a huge map, which is like all experiences, everything is captured on that map. And then your brain is like pattern recognition machine. Your brain is predicting based on what you were living through and what is your experience, or what were your visions, and so on. So more you will do it, you will be able to cope better and better with your stress, basically. That's the point.
Exactly. And one of the really basic things that I do is I create what I call like mantras. So not from like a yoga term, right? It's not like I am enough, but really just the opposite. When I notice my brain's going into a fearful moment, one of the most common ones for me, and probably for you, is I don't have enough time. And immediately when I notice the fear cycle start, I say the opposite. I say, I have all the time I need for the things that are most important. And then I say it again, like, hey, wait, I have all the time I need. Nobody's going to die. This is not an urgent thing. I have have all the time I need. And I do the same. One of the biggest stressors why we have the snowflake generation is they had so many things done so nicely for them, so conveniently for them, that they never learned how to deal with frustration, because we have a lot of frustration in our lives, but we made everything so convenient, it's not frustrating. And so when I'm like, oh my God, I have to wait, and this isn't going as I planned, and it's like, they're not doing it the way I wanted, I just say to myself, hey, I'm having a frustration moment. I can handle frustration. Like, that's okay. This is something I can do. And just having those sayings, phrases available to me, like noticing what it is and being like, pause for a second. Is this worth freaking out about? No, I can handle this. This is a nothing. This is not something I'll remember in 10 years. And that's how we can learn to let it go. So make sure you have some little sayings when your mind wants to go down a cycle of negative, bad, wrong.
Like automatic. Absolutely. Because why people started to talk, because before we had a language, we basically were putting, the experience from the previous generations maybe on some pictures, whatever. So we try to give, our experience and the knowledge to the next generation. That's why we created language. So it means that words in the language, those are symbols, and they are, symbolic, and there are some pictures in our, brain. So if, as Lisa said, I would still go around and say, I don't have enough time, it's terrible, it's a very dangerous situation right now. Guess what? You will be in the stress and you will think like that. It's called confirmation bias. If you think you are in the deep shit, the one thing, if you are in the, if you are like falling down, you need to stop to dig, basically, right? So this is it. Right? If you are in the hole, you need to stop right? Digging the hole, right? Now, the words are having, really in our lives key meanings. American Navy, they figure out, if you would tell the soldiers this is very dangerous, right? They performance, there's a lot of cortisol. They basically tested the blood, and there was a lot of cortisol, and performance went down. If they said it's a challenging, it is tough, but I can do it, it's challenging, then there was a testosterone and the performance went up. There are some schools in the United States, some universities, they stop, if you fail, they stop to call it failed. They call it not yet, which means hey, there was some, effort, right? So I'm recognized for the effort. I'm not there yet. That's the same what I do with athletes. I would be easily every day frustrated because I have so many athletes. Everybody is competing, and right, and I almost every day there's somebody losing, but I'm always asking them, what is the learning? What is the next step? Right? Because that's the way, and it's the same in business, right? Not all I was working in a very successful company, but as you know, not all things which Microsoft did went, as a success, right? It's always like that. Yep.
The only other thing I want to share with people, please notice, as we talked about longevity, we didn't say, hey, you have to do crazy protocols and you need to take all sorts of supplements and you need to change your lifestyle. What we're talking about is, how do you understand what's happening in your body, and how do you make easy changes? And for sleep, the only other thing I want to say here is, in the morning, make sure you see sunlight. Again, use the body, let it work for you. Stop trying to be intellectual and say, okay, I'm going to be less stressed and I'm going to do this. There's a lot of tricks you can use with the body. If you see sunlight first thing in the morning, your body says, great, it's morning. And what that does is it starts your circadian rhythm so that it knows later in the evening, it's bedtime now. If you wake up in the dark and you then get an artificial sun lamp, but don't be like, oh, I'm rushing through my day and this, and 3 hours later, I maybe saw the sun for 5 minutes in my train.
I do red light in winter, and as Elisa rightly said, it's setting up circadian rhythm, which means digestion system is started, but also it's good for your concentration for the whole day. Andrew Huberman actually is talking about, hey, Lisa, by the way, Nika is, suggesting to do like one more, positive session on longevity. And probably we should, because today we really covered like mind and body connection, and next time we can, talk a little bit more about other routines and protocols, little bit, more about like what we should do in terms of exercise. Because, guys, as you may know, for many years, we thought that food is really key for longevity. It's still very, 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 very important. But we figure out it's actually physical exercise, because you can eat well, but unless you will have a good, physical constitution, it's hard to survive, longer, if you will. For example, like for me, I'm 63. I do a lot of heavy weight, lifting. I do like running and everything, but also heavy weight lifting, like with my body weight or with some, iron. But we should talk a little bit also about that, about, light, more about, the breathing, things like meditation and so on, to really help, like who is doing, what, right? So, but
that's
anyway,
a great teaser for the next session, because what I'm going to tease
it was a great session and many people here. So really
good. And join us for the next one, because there's one longevity hack that nobody talks about and is key, which is your relationships with other people.
Exactly, because relationships are, when they were studying, by the way, if I can recommend one on general longevity, there is a great piece on Netflix about blue zones. Okay, I'm sure you did it. And
I haven't seen it.
No, you should. They talk about Okinawa and, about Italy and stuff like that. And they figure out that in those places, actually, as you said, there's a great social environment that people really enjoy, like having a lunch together or, having a dinner together, maybe have a glass of wine, right? Stuff like that. So social environment and a relationship, very important. Then they figure out, which is interesting, that those people usually, they live in the villages on the towns where they need to go, up and down. That it's like, you know what I mean, right? There is it's like that, right? And what I started to do, in the elevators in the subway, to go like on the left side, to really like, walk, not, to stay and get a ride,
It makes a difference.
Listen, I was studying how many people in general are, getting in the left line, right? It's 1%, 1% only.
So, guys, you have a teaser for our next session, because these are all the things that are going to go.
Last week, I was there and I was in the right line. I was so tired. And somebody like knocked my, shoulder and said, well, you should, Mr. Milfight, you should go to the left line. As you always recommend,
Busted. We've had a question for a sum up, but I have to tell you guys, to be honest, what Jan and I do, well, obviously we have notes of what we want to cover beforehand, but we sort of jive off of each other. And I couldn't actually tell you what was said in a nice, clean way, other than to say, maybe you can, Jan, other than to say, we really talk about the body and how it is, how stress is actually created, why stress is not what you think it is. Oh, it's just, I don't have enough time. No, that's the belief you have. And that's the hormones in your body that are then reacting to the belief. And how do we stop that so you're not spinning? How do we make sure that we can take a step back? We have some energy, we have some tools to get us moving forward in that direction. And then all the different physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ways.
I think this is great summary. But guys, anyway, it's captured and saved on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so you can watch it from because it's recorded, right? Anyway, okay, so thank you very much. That was a great session. Thanks for being here.
We'll see you next time. Longevity 2.0.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward.
Take care, everyone.